Okay, so you actually went.
Yeah, I did. I did. And I mean, I have a lot of good things to say, but I think the piece that was a little confusing for me as a consumer, right? Not as a business coach who's looking at their business model, but as a consumer, I'm sitting at the table looking at the menu. The prices are higher than what I pay around here in the Portland area. So I'm thinking, okay, that fee's already baked into the price. And the way it's worded on the menu makes it sound like it's already baked into the price.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the bill came, it wasn't baked into the price.
What
And
wasn't baked
so,
into the price? Like the tips or?
well, yeah, because they don't tip, right? Like it's a
Right,
20% service charge
right.
that they add to the bill for all dine in. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a note that says, tipping's not required. It's appreciated. It will go to your server. And I'm like, well, now I'm confused.
Right.
Like, am I doing 20% and a tip? Cause I'm not like, help me as a consumer, make it easy for me as a consumer to understand what I'm really paying for.
Right.
We ended up, it was almost $100 for our lunch. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, that's a bit more than I thought we were like,
And it was just two of you,
okay.
right?
And it was just the two of us. It's just my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I, and it was like fish and chips and a soup and sandwich. And so it was like, wait, huh? So I was a little surprised. But like I said, lots of really nice things to say about this place too. That was
Mm-hmm.
just something that as a consumer kind of caught me by surprise.
Well, I think we've got some good stuff to talk about in terms of pricing and expectations and food and the way our country does that. So let's get started for real. In the world of business, there are a lot of choices. There are a lot of lies. There are a lot of shortcuts. There are a lot of people taking those shortcuts and telling those lies. And then there are the people who choose to do it right. At a time when so often profit is king, those people are increasingly rare. But when those people are in charge, good things happen. Fortunately, some of those people are business owners. Some of those people are bosses. And we're here to showcase the best ones. I'm your host, Leela Sinha, with co-host Lisa Robin Young. Let's get started. So welcome to PowerPivot, Season 3. This is Episode 4. My name is 4, right? My name is Leela Sinha, and this is Lisa Robin Young. And she is my co-host, and we are excited to have you with us on PowerPivot Best Bosses, where we're talking about businesses that are doing things right. It does sort of imply that we're talking about employee relationships, but really it's everything that a company can do right, especially in this moment, in this place, in this time when so many companies are not doing things right. So today we are talking about Local Ocean, which is a Newport, Oregon seafood restaurant and fish market. And I was hoping to get out there, but I'm in the middle of some significant life chaos. So Lisa managed to get out there. And so we're going to be hearing from her about her experience. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about the cost of doing business.
Yeah. So my husband and I went out over our weekend to Newport, and right off the bat, the thing, and this might seem silly, but to me, it was a really powerful expression of community care, right? So we're pulling up along dockside, and there's several docks, and the fishing boats are out. Some are already leaving, some are coming in. I mean, they're in all states of traffic flow, and we're trying to find a place to park. But all along, like the prime parking real estate, it all says licensed fishermen only, and it's like they really actually want these people in their community to have the resources that are important for them. Like they don't need to truck 10 blocks from where they park their car to get on a boat. Like you
Which
can
is
park
wonderful.
practically right in front of where your boat is parked. And, tourists can fend for themselves.
Right.
And as a municipality, I think that that's a really great message to send to the hundreds and hundreds of workers who are on the docks, who are getting on the boats, because if you go to Newport, you'll see obviously the docks and the boats, but then there are two fisheries, like boom, boom, like right there on the
Mm-hmm.
water, and they're processing fish and they're bringing them in, and they're,
Right.
you see all of the workers moving around, and they're right across the street from Local Ocean. So, I mean, it was all right there. You could see the fishing industry ecosystem,
Right.
basically, from
Right. I
from
mean,
from the
it's a
water
it's
to
a
the boat
working
to
waterfront.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And so, you're watching all of that go on, and then you come upon local ocean once you find a place to park.
Since you are not a fisherman.
That's right. I am not, not a fisherman. So we actually got a pretty decent place to park. The fish market space is pretty good size, right? And they've got lots of options, and they also have an indoor dining area and an outdoor patio dining area. So we chose to eat out on the patio. And I mean, they've done some really nice things to service the customer in this space, right? Like they've got all their displays set up front. So even if you're coming to eat in the restaurant, you're coming past all of the displays of all
like
of the
fish
retail
market
goods
part.
that they have.
Yeah.
Right, like the fish market part. So like you get the fish market experience without having to buy a fish and take it to your table and figure out how to prepare it, right?
Oh, have you been to Portugal?
No, I haven't. It's on my bucket list. We go around the corner and we sit outside, and even out there, they have set up basically a food cart truck where they have right. Except, I mean, they're not actually like serving out of the truck. This is like their outdoor bar service area,
yeah.
right? Like, so this is where their service team goes to enter orders, to get plates and dishes and those kinds of things. So it's basically
it's like a service
second
station,
right? Yeah, basically. But it's nice, right? Like they don't have to run all the way indoors. So they've really thought about the traffic flow and how to keep the doorway clear, because they've got all that stuff outside, but it's all in shelter, so you don't have to worry about the plates are going to get dirty or any of those kinds of things. It doesn't feel like it's a temporary space, even though, I mean, technically it is. It's a seasonal space. Wait staff was charming and very kind and happy to be there, right? And we've talked before about how in food service you can be cranky because you're not being well cared for, right?
Yeah.
And the turnover can be high. And our server was very complimentary and Johnny on the spot and just really available to us. And there were other customers in the area. It wasn't like it was just us. When you open up the menu, when you open up the menu, you see the story of this company and why they do the things that they do. And so they're educating you, and you're getting this really great experience where you feel cared for from beginning to end, right? From the moment that they take you to a seat to the moment that you're paying the bill and walking out the door. It's a really thoughtful experience,
which is a really great thing in places like that where a little insider knowledge goes a long way. If you're coming from Portland, you may never have had to encounter anything except there's a fish and chips on the menu and I checked it off and that's what I wanted. And so understanding a little more about the context and a little more about the fish, oh, look, there's more than one kind of fish. Oh, dear. What do we do now?
There was more than one kind of fish for the fish and chips. I opened up the menu and I'm like, I think I'll have fish and chips because that's an easy, right?
Right, yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's 3 different kinds of fish. And I'm not fish smart, so I don't know one fish from another. I mean, I know some fish from another, but in fish and chips, no. And so I'm like, tell me about my options here. And she was very knowledgeable about the product. Which is always great when you've got service people who have product knowledge, right? And I'm talking about it in this more generic way because this is applicable to any business in any industry.
Right.
When your people on the floor have good product knowledge, it allows your customer to feel more trust in not only the recommendations, but in the organization. Right? We're not getting the runaround. We're not being told, I don't know, this is only my second day.
Right.
It's like, I can tell you right away, these are the things that you need to know. So if you like something that's a little more fishy, you'll probably want this. If you want something that's a little more firm, you're going to want this. And having that kind of knowledge around your product line gives everybody a better experience because your server even feels like they are more knowledgeable, right? Like, oh, wow, look at me being smart and being helpful to our customers. You know,
I mean,
and I'm sure they don't think about it like that, but it's like that stuff becomes important to your sense of belonging in the organization.
Right. right. And taking pride in your work is a thing, right? Being able to be proud. They're sort of your fish sommelier.
Yes. Yes, in this instance, absolutely. They were also wine sommelier because I'm like, I don't know anything about wine either. Like,
Right.
I want to be a foodie. I am not a foodie.
Oh, don't
Like,
worry.
I'm
Portland will
not.
make you into a foodie. Have you
That's what they
been,
tell me.
tiny little sidebar, have you been to Portland Fish Market in Woodstock yet?
No, not yet.
You should go. They have four different kinds of fish available for their fish and chips, which is gluten free and very tasty. It's like it's excellent, excellent. I have been living like less than a block from there, so it is my go-to. Oh my God, I can't cook tonight. Food. So, highly recommend. But but that's what you want to see, right? In a working waterfront town, in an oceanside town, in a fisherman's town. That's what you want to see is staff and whether you're buying at a fish market or whether you're buying at a restaurant, you want to see people who really understand fish because broadly speaking, Americans do not understand fish.
I don't.
Yeah.
I remember as a child, my dad would say, put the worm on the hook, put the hook in the water, wait for the fish. Like whatever you caught, right? And if it was something that you didn't want to keep, you threw it back. I caught a lot of sunfish. Didn't catch much else, you know, because I was just a kid. So yeah, no, not a. Again, want to be a foodie? Not a foodie. I like the idea of being a foodie. Not a foodie.
A growing foodie, an aspiring foodie.
There you go. There you go.
So you're at Local Ocean and you have this very well cared for, well curated experience, it sounds like.
Yes, very much so.
And they are they're employee owned, right?
I believe that is accurate. I think they have a modified business model where, because they transitioned into an employee, it's a collective organization. So it's not, I'm going to lie here. It's not truly employee owned. I think there's like a holding company and the employees own that or something like that.
Got it. Okay, so the website says extraordinary seafood experiences from local Oregon fishermen.
But I mean, they're talking. You can see on the menu. It's like these are the fish that came in today. You know, this is the fish that we've ordered from the fishery across the street, right? Like this, so it's fresh, and it's local. I don't think there's anything on the menu that I saw that wasn't locally sourced.
Which is fantastic because I've had so much trouble finding places where I can get local seafood, and I was shocked because I moved to Portland from the Bay Area and to the Bay Area from Maine, and the only way you get fish in Maine is local. Like you can buy, like people will all look at you sideways. You could buy that from somewhere else, but why would you do that when we have perfectly good fish here and lots of it and lots of different kinds of. So when I came to the West Coast and I was like, where's the local fish? And they were like, I don't know. I guess that one's kind of local. It's from Alaska.
Yeah, like 80%. I think it might have been in the menu, but I was reading while I was there that something like 80% of the fish that is caught along the Oregon coast is exported to every place but the Oregon area. And I was just like, wow. So at most 20% of the fish that these people are catching is going to stay local and the rest of it's all going to go somewhere else.
Right.
That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's a very strange model for something like fish. Because fish does not travel well. It can be made to travel, but it is so much better when it has not been made to travel. So I was really delighted to see this restaurant. I was like, oh, yay! There's a place that has local fish.
Yeah. Well, local fish, and one of the things that I was really interested in was we pay a living wage, right? And we've talked about that when we talked about Detroit 75 Kitchen. And we're talking about two different economic regions of the country. So it's like, all right, well, we've seen how they've done it in the Midwest. How are they doing it here?
Right.
Because the cost of living is typically higher on this side of the country.
Right.
And in lots of places where I live, it's higher than where I used to live when I lived in Michigan. So it was like, all right, let's kind of do an apples to apples comparison and see what we're dealing with here. And that's where as a consumer, I was a little surprised by how things were priced. But as a business owner, I liked what they were doing. I just wish they had been a little bit more
Clear
clear
about it.
from the consumer's side of things. But the idea itself is we're only surcharging people who dine in.
Right.
And everybody gets paid a fair wage, but if you're dining in, there's just more work in serving you. So we're charging that extra 20% on the price of whatever it is that you're buying because we want to continue to pay everyone a living wage, not just your server who showed up at the table to take your order and deliver your food. So this is how we do that.
Right.
And then if you want to tip on top of that, you're more than welcome to, which I think is a great business model because it ensures that costs are covered, people are being cared for in wages and benefits.
Right.
Right. They can work a full-time shift, right? It's not, well, we're going to work you 3 hours today and 4 hours tomorrow, and then we're going to be off for the rest of the week, like is very common in food service, right? They're working full-day shifts. Then you've got an opportunity to really take care of yourself and stay in your community and not have to worry about, oh, I got to move away because I got to go find a job that pays me. Well, I can work here.
Right. And I can have a career here instead of just a job.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that it's really great to think about, like, what is the business model that allows people to do that? When we talk about retail or we talk about food service, so often, as you say, we're talking about people who are being given these erratic, first of all, an erratic schedule, which don't get me started on erratic scheduling because I think it's terrible. It's just so hard on the people who are in it, right? And then in addition to that, we're talking about 3 hours here, 4 hours there. You can work a dinner shift here. You can work after the game there, and then maybe nothing else the rest of the week. And so you don't have a full-time job, but you're expected to be available anytime they want you. And so it's very hard to get another job. It's very hard to have a social life. It's very hard to build a network. It's very hard to have the kind of community support that we talked about last time, right? So it's such a challenge. So when I sit down and think, if I were in charge of the world, what would I do? One of the things I would do is give retail and food service people regular, predictable hours and full-time for anybody who wanted it. Some people don't want full-time. It's an extra job or they have kids or whatever, but a lot of people want full-time. And so how do we get that full-time support for people who want it, and how do we get, and I think, your price discrepancy challenge is partially that. Right.
Sure.
That Portland is expensive, but the coast isn't less expensive. The coast is tourist and, wealthy beach house sort of territory. And then the people who serve them. And so,
that's fair.
And so what happens, in Maine, we had a similar problem. It was, Acadia National Park has originally, it's on an island, and originally there was like the fancy side and then the quiet side of the island, which used to be where all the help lived. And now it's just as expensive to live on the quiet side. So all the help lives, 3 towns over and back on the mainland. And it's a lot of gas to get down there to work. But that's a challenge of coastal living, a challenge of these kinds of fishing communities, is that they're the people who serve the fancy people, and then they're the fancy people, and trying to make the economics work for both of them. I think Detroit 75 Kitchen was an interesting example because it was in a city where you could reasonably expect all the pieces to fit together. But the further toward the coast you get, the more isolated you get. In this case, you're on the other side of mountains, you're on the other side of things. It gets really, really hard to figure out how we can make an actual robust economy work there, in a way that the people who serve that economy can afford.
Right.
Did that sentence make sense?
It does make sense, and I'm sitting here imagining myself as the fancy people. I'm like, oh, I get to be the fancy people for a hot second. Yay! But I mean, this is something that we see anytime you have, and I know Newport's not a big town, but anytime you have urban expansion, right? Anytime you have a city center that starts to grow and more people are coming in, demand for housing, prices go up, like all of that happens. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the coast or in a little farm town somewhere. Right. As demand goes up, prices go up. And so, to your point, the idea of how do we then care for the people who are doing the work?
Right.
so that they don't have to truck in from 70 miles away or an hour away or even 30 minutes away because that's where they can afford to live. How do we create a business model that pays them a living wage for where we are,
Right.
not where we want to ship them off to because everything costs more here? So I think that that's one of the things that I think they've done very well is the pricing. While I was surprised by it, there were several people around us who come every week because the servers knew their names and hello again and
Right.
all of that. So they're used to it. They're aware of it. They know what's going on. And you're not typically, even in a tourist town, you're not typically trying to build your business solely on tourist traffic that's only going to be there once or twice.
Right.
You want those repeat customers who are there with you throughout the season, who are the locals. Because number one, if the locals go there, that means it's probably pretty good.
Right.
Right? If the locals are coming back, then that's how you know that they've got something good going on. So there's that piece. And then the other side of that coin is, as you build those relationships with your customers through your service team, they are more inclined to want to come back because
Right.
they are being well taken care of while they're there. And we had a wonderful experience while we were in the space. So, I mean, it was a really nice experience.
Which is very similar to what we saw with Mr. Mixer, right? Like people have such a good relationship with the company and have such good experiences with the service that when Mr. Mixer, when anybody's got a mixer and it comes up, like those people become ambassadors, essentially. They become brand ambassadors.
I can't tell you how many mixers I've seen on Facebook Marketplace while I'm looking for other things. I'm like, I should buy that. And I should send it to Mr. Mixer. And then I should, like, I'm going to do an arbitrage thing. Like, my brain was going.
Yeah. So I think there's an interesting question, this business of like commuting and the service staff versus the customers, because we look at something like the Bay Area and we have a similar problem, but a very, like, it's not the same problem, but it's that if you want your employees close to your company and your company's in the Bay Area because that's the nexus of whatever, you've got to pay. You've got to pay well, because people in the Bay Area, I was shocked when I lived there. People commuted 3 hours to work in the morning and 3 hours home. That's a whole extra work day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a whole extra work
Well,
day.
and the horror stories that I've had clients who lived in the Bay Area as they were growing their business, and it was like, yeah, I'm renting this basement space. So not even like an apartment, just a space in someone's basement. And the heat doesn't work right, and this problem's going on, and oh, I'm paying almost $2,000 a month for this
Right.
hovel, right? And it's just like,
Right.
housing is out of control, right? And there's still a need. It's still got to be filled, and people still need jobs, and right? So how do we strike the balance? Because we're still inside capitalism, right? That hasn't changed. What do we do, and how do we do things differently so that people actually have an opportunity for being closer and not having to do another day's worth of work just to drive to and from work?
Right. And, like Google, at least for a while, was solving the problem with very fancy tour buses that drove in from various places, and they had Wi-Fi. So some people would get on the bus and start their workday on the bus, and then like arrive at the office, be at the office for the core hours, and then get back on the bus and finish their workday on the bus, which is at least a little bit more fair in terms of the personal cost and the opportunity cost of being in a commute that long. But it doesn't actually solve the problem. And then, there are some companies that have talked about building company housing. And I'm like, we do not need company towns and company stores. We tried that. It was terrible. Let's not do that.
Well, I will say, since we're talking about company housing, 100 years ago, and I do mean like 100 years ago, because I grew up in Flint, General Motors founded a completely different division of the company called Modern Housing. And they actually built homes in neighborhood, like whole neighborhoods of homes. And you can find these plans online of all these Modern Housing Edition homes, and they're scattered across wherever there was a GM town.
Right.
They built these homes, and the executives would buy them, or the middle managers would buy them and move their families in, and they owned those homes. So I think there is an opportunity there. So long as we're looking at it as, how do we facilitate giving our people proximity, and not how do we generate another profit center, right? Like, that's the distinction that I think we need to make, as, you know, potential business owners who are trying to solve a proximity problem via housing for our people. Right. If you take it as, if this is another profit center, you're not going on our best bosses list. It's not happening.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that they could buy them, right? Because, you know, homeownership is considered one of the major paths to achieving middle classhood. And it's one of the biggest challenges right now, as we can see from all kinds of different political and social situations. And so if you're a company that's like, how do we make it so everybody can own a home? You know, gravity payments is so complicated, but the original, so do you know about the gravity payments thing? Dan Price.
No, I'm familiar with the company, but I'm not familiar with what's going on.
So Dan Price, a number of years ago, Dan Price read an article that said that happiness does in fact go up with income until you hit about $70,000. And now that number is more like 90, but at the time it was 70. And then it sort of tops out because $70,000 is where everybody's basic needs are met. You know, you got housing security and recreation and savings and all the things that, you know, a 1950s middle class ideal would have had. And so he actually went to the mat for that idea that everybody at Gravity Payment should make at least $70,000 a year.
Okay, yes. I remember this story. I did not realize it was that company, but yes, I'm familiar.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it's complicated because it turns out Dan Price is maybe not the best person in the world. But this particular move was a really great move, actually. He changed so many lives by doing it because he didn't sit down and say, how can I bring my employees closer? He didn't sit down and say, the cost of living is too high, I should control their housing. He sat down and said, how do we bring these people into a middle class existence? And the answer was everybody should make at least $70,000 a year. And what he did was he took his salary and distributed it down. And so when we think about this problem of like pricing and housing and local community, you know, I think there are a lot of different ways to solve it, but one of them definitely is build housing and make it affordable for your employees to buy it and make them they just own it. You don't have control over it. You can't kick them out of their house if they then quit their job. Like none of that, you can't raise their rent because your profit isn't profity enough. You just make them a house they can buy.
Yeah. The number, I don't remember where I was reading it, but I was reading something to the effect of one of the reasons why we're seeing a population decline, and people not having children at as young an age is because they're like, well, what are we going to do? Have it at mom's house? Because we don't even have our own homes yet, right?
Right.
Like first time home buyers are like now in their 40s. Like as we see that happen, there is a natural consequence on the backside of that. That's like, we don't have the safety and stability to have kids or have more kids. So we're not going to, and then there are consequences.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's an important thing for us to consider that when we can, as business owners, when we can not only do business in a way that allows us to serve our customers and serve them well so that we're paid well, right, as an organization, but then to translate that back to the people who are doing that work so that they are taken care of and they can live well, right? They can do well. Like there has to be reciprocity. We've watched C-suite salaries just skyrocket while other payroll is on the decline, and the decline's getting worse because we're seeing what's happening with AI. I have a good friend who said, her sister's a nurse and their hospital just decided they're going to cut the entire education department and most of customer service and let AI do it. And it's like, well, some of those people are going to get called back, right? But
Right.
we're watching that continual drive costs down mode of capitalism, and there is a consequence on the backside that people aren't going to be available to buy the things that you want to offer.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. So if we look at what the prices are, the necessary pricing in order to maintain a business so that everybody gets fair wages and everybody gets good benefits and everybody, like the kind of business, if we look at that and we say, okay, this is what it costs for fish and chips, if we're paying everybody like that, then we have to bring everybody's wages up so they can buy those fish and chips.
That's right. That's right.
And, I think more and more cartoons are starting to go around about like, did you not consider the fact that if you put people out of work, that they then can't buy the product that you're trying to sell them?
That's right.
And there's more and more kind of whining from the corporate overlords that's like, oh, people aren't buying our stuff as much. People don't want to buy our stuff as much. The whole wine industry has been having a fit because nobody wants to buy their wine anymore. And it's like, well, one thing is people are drinking less alcohol. But another thing is alcohol is an expensive nice to have and not a requirement.
Yeah.
And you know what
sure.
goes off your shopping list when you're feeling pinched at the grocery store? The expensive nice to have.
That's right. That's right. And I was reading that there was a company recently who was, and I mean, I'm not trying to go down an AI tangent here, but they were basically complaining that they had told their organization, we need to use AI, get into it, figure it out.
Use it as much as possible.
Use it as much as possible. And they had blown through their annual budget for tokens in 4 months.
Yeah, I saw that same article, I think.
And then it was like, whoa, we got to back up the truck. And it's like, you guys should have been making those decisions long before you told everybody to start using it, right? Like those decisions are important to make ahead of time as you're looking at your business model. Hey, this new opportunity has fallen into our laps. AI, a new kind of fish, a new place to fish, right? It doesn't matter what the opportunity is. This opportunity has come in front of us. What are we going to do with it? How does it fit what we're currently about? And does it even fit with what we're currently about? And if it doesn't, we can let that go. And yeah, there will be consequences if we don't take it up right now, and maybe we'll take it up later and maybe we won't. Or yeah, this is like exactly what we need to really do great work for our people, for us, for the people that we serve. Then now, how are we going to use it in ways that are effective? How are we going to put this opportunity to its best possible use with the understanding of who we are and what really matters to us as an organization, right? Not just, oh, hey, here's this new thing. Everybody go play with it and figure it out. Like somebody's going to get hurt. A lot of somebodies are going to get hurt.
Right. And the sort of the rapid adoption, right? I've never seen and I've been paying attention to tech my whole life, basically. I've never seen a tech get adopted this fast, this wholesale, like there's some kind of urgency, like I don't know, we have to pee. Like it's just it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel responsible, it doesn't feel like it makes any sense. And as a tech company, because I know which company it was, as a tech company, surely they should have realized that the unlimited access was going to go away and that the model was going to become token based. The fees were going to be taken. Like they had to have been able to predict that.
You can see that in so many other industries, right? Like you can see it with, right, exactly. But I mean, you can see it with, social media, right? Social media was free and now you pay if you want the perks. Uber was lower priced. And then I'm like, you're going to see, you have to, anytime you have a loss leader product to get user base, that money's got to come from somewhere sometime.
Right.
And invariably, it's a price hike or it's ads or it's a price hike and ads in the case of Netflix, right? Like, so you really need to think about, if you're the person creating this, what's that end game going to be? But if you're a person who's utilizing it, what are you doing as a business owner to insulate yourself from the risk of these things are going to happen in the future, right? One of the things that I hear a lot of people in the business social justice world talk about is having a business that can sustain itself and take care of its people and all of that. And I think that's very important. And I also think there needs to be a line item for saving for the future, just like human beings have a saving for the future, right? Like if we're running just above break even forever and ever, when something happens, we don't have the cushion to provide for making sure that we can still pay our people if the income doesn't come in for a little while.
Right.
And then we have to lay everybody off, right? Like, so I think we need to remember to have a little bit of cushion, not $1 trillion worth of cushion, right? Like we don't need that much cushion.
Nobody needs $1 trillion. Well, and the thing is that so often when people start out as a solopreneur, right, they're like, okay, I have very low overhead because I have a virtual business, for example. And so, as soon as they start to make a little money that they can put in their pocket, they're like, aha, we're profitable. Well, no, your salary is a business expense. That's really, really hard for people to wrap their heads around, like extremely hard. Even people who've been working in their businesses and on their businesses for 10 years, 15 years, I say to them, your salary is a business expense. And they go, no, I'm profitable because I have a salary. I'm like, no, you break even because you have a salary, if your salary is adequate. But no, that's an expense of your business. If your business had a profit, it would be over and above your salary and expenses.
Right. If you had to hire somebody else to do your job, it would be a business expense. So it's a business expense for you too. Right? It's just a different employee's name on that line item.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, there's this whole thing about you're a CEO, think like a CEO, don't think like an employee. But the fact is we're both.
Right.
I have to do all the things in my business, and then I have to also, or all the things I don't hire someone else to do. And then I also have to do on my business. I have to think strategically, okay, what am I doing? Am I making a podcast? What is that podcast for? Why strategically have I decided to do this and have these conversations? Is my goal to get the word out? Is my goal to get someone's attention? Is my goal, and then if it's not working out as a business case, change it or drop it. Because it's a business decision.
Right. And I think this is something that we can see in a lot of micro business owners who get married to the mode, right? Well, I'm going to continue to offer this product because that's what I've become known for. Yeah, but is it profitable? Is it doing what you wanted to do? Does it bring you joy? Is it filling your bucket anymore? No. Why are you hanging on to it? Well, I need the money. Okay, cool. I hear that. And maybe we need to start experimenting with some other things so that you can find something that you can transition to so that you can let that thing go if it's not your joy zone anymore, right? And as a micro business owner, we have the luxury of being able to do those kinds of things.
We can turn on a dime.
It would be really hard for a big company like Apple to be like, we're just not feeling cell phones anymore, so we're just not going to do that. Like that's not.
They can.
I mean, they could, but it would be huge, right? Plus, the ROI is still there, right? And they're not doing a whole lot from a place of what brings me joy and what lights me up. And even if they were going to say we're not going to do cell phones anymore, there's this whole ramp down period that they have to go through. They're not agile enough to just be able to be like, yeah, tomorrow we're not selling those phones anymore because they've got a backlog of inventory they've got to clear.
I mean, to be fair, Google has tried that on a number of different products, and it never goes over well.
Nope.
But they sure have done it.
Sure.
So going back to this idea of creating a sustainable business model with pricing and with economics, like what are the things that you think people can do to bridge that gap when they're like, okay, it's going to be $100 for lunch, and it's not a fancy 4-course lunch.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a couple of things, right? I think as a business owner, you need to keep listening, right? As someone who was going in for my first experience and not knowing what to expect, there were some things that weren't clear. And so I made that known to people. I'm like, I'm not as a complaint, but just hey, it would have been a little more helpful if this had been a little more clear.
Right.
So if they're listening to that kind of feedback and taking it in and really using it, I think that's the first thing. And it's not just from your customers, it's also from your team. It's also from, the community, if you've got a very community involved offer. Like, you have to be listening to the stakeholders, right? And assimilating that information. I think that's the first piece. And then the second piece is clear education, right? Make sure that you're communicating, this is how that 20% plus tip or not works, right? This is how, and this is why, right? Let us buy into the story of what we're becoming a part of. Right. Our employees take ownership because then they have a voice and they get to see how it works and they experience the consequences of business ownership, and it allows them to really be a part of the entire ecosystem, right? Like, those kinds of things matter, because when we care as consumers, when we care about what we're using or what we're buying, we're more invested. Right. We want to know that we're working with great organizations. We want to know that the people that we're spending our money with are doing good things in the world. We at least want to know that they're not creating all kinds of harm. Right. I can't tell you the number of people that shop at various big box outlets online and who are like, well, unfortunately, I have to shop at the evil empire. Right. Like, they predicate what they're saying on that. And so like,
because they know they don't want to be part of that.
Right, exactly.
But they feel like they don't have a choice. So the minute you run a flag up the flagpole and say, hey, you have a choice. We're the choice. We're better. Right. And the flag is flapping along in the breeze. Right. As soon as we have that kind of market, like, you can't pay for that marketing except with your employees' salaries.
Right. Exactly. And we've seen through what we saw with Detroit 75 Kitchen, when you are taking care of your stakeholders, they will take care of you. They will stay longer. They will serve with smiles on their face. They will sing your praises. They will talk about what's great about being a part of your world. They become your evangelists, whether they're sitting at the table next to you ordering for the third time that week, or they're the one handing you the menu. You see the energy of those people and how excited they are to be a part of it.
Yeah, and so I'm working on a software project right now, and as we're building the beta group, it's the same thing. We have a Discord for the beta users, and it's the same kind of thing where people are coming in and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And when they realize that the founder developer, which is not me, that the founder developer is listening to them and is like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And, "Oh, that's really good feedback. And, oh, thank you for catching that bug." Right, they get more engaged, they get more excited. And as their engagement grows, part of my job is to kind of spot what's happening in the community, and make suggestions about it. So as it grows, I saw that a bunch of people were going to an event, and I was like, we should have a channel for people who are going to the event so they can talk about the event and get excited about meeting in person, right? And creating that kind of joy and excitement and buy-in, because it feels like a good thing to be part of. It's something you can do with your customers. It's something you can do with your employees. It's something you can do with your leadership staff. It's something you can do with everybody. And then people are like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
And it doesn't have to be a huge line item in the budget, right? And I think that's the other thing that we as business owners are constantly aware of, is like, well, what's this going to quote unquote cost me?
Right.
And there's the old online, well, what's it going to cost you to not do it, right? Kind of a thing. But the reality is, when you can find these easy ways, these low cost, no cost ways to engage community, create support, show people that you give a damn. Right. It makes a huge difference in your bottom line. Huge.
And your unique selling proposition is that you give a damn these days.
Yeah.
Like that. Sure. That's what's real. Is, people talk about a USP, or a unique selling proposition, which is the thing that makes your business different from other businesses doing the same thing or in the same space. And the fact is that your USP is that you give a damn. Your USP is that you care about your staff and you set up structures for that. Your USP is that you care about your customers and you set up structures for that, like Local Ocean did. Your USP is that you have tried to design a kind of full life cycle experience that feels like something people can be proud to be part of. That when they say, I'm shopping here, they're not like, I'm sorry, I'm shopping. Right? Don't take my
Exactly.
picture walking into the Amazon store, right?
No cameras,
And
please. No cameras.
right? And none of us want to feel like that ever.
Right.
But we especially don't want to feel like that every time we, go to a restaurant or go grab a quart of milk or whatever. And so anything that a company can do to make you feel like, oh yeah, I shop here is better.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
for sure.
ironically, no company should know that better than Apple. Apple had such a following, and it wasn't because they had good labor practices, but they had created such a robust identity,
Yeah.
and now it's kind of gone.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone, and I could talk about intensives and expansives and Tim Cook versus Steve Jobs, but the way that a company kind of built. Does it make sense to say that it builds on its charisma?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because charisma is the thing that we are drawn to with any organization, right? Or repelled by,
Right.
right? There's a reason why Apple can hold $1 trillion in offshore stored profit and not get the same kind of backlash that this new trillionaire to the market is getting for being a trillionaire, right?
Right.
Like, because they've created something with some charisma that people want to be a part of or have wanted to be a part of, right? Like they've created that equity of goodwill that, they're slowly draining, but because they had it, you want to see your team win, right? And so if you have latched onto a personality of a brand and made that part of your identity, like I'm an Apple user, I'm a
Right.
Mac, I'm a PC, right? Like when you
I'm a Mets
do
fan.
that, and you can see it in politics too. When you latch onto an identity that you tie to a brand, it's very hard because it's very sticky. It's very hard to extricate yourself from that identity relationship.
Right.
And so when you have a brand that is charismatic in the ways that are attractive to a buyer, they're naturally going to want to latch on and stay latched because there's just so much effort to get unlatched and go find something else. I mean, really, it's stressful and frustrating, and decision fatigue is real. And it's like, I don't know if I've told this story on your podcast yet or not, but when I was a kid and we would drive from town to town, my mom would only stop at McDonald's because McDonald's had clean bathrooms until they didn't.
Right.
Anytime we needed to go to the bathroom, we would always stop at a McDonald's. We didn't even buy anything. We just go in the side door, go to the bathroom, and get up back on the road until the day that we stopped at one that did not have clean bathrooms. And then she was like, that's it. I'm never going to another McDonald's again because it was terrible, right? And then it was like, road trips got interesting. But the point being, it was such a hassle to figure out where to go to a rest area, like get in on the, oh, look, I could just go find a McDonald's and I know I'll be fine. Until they lost all their charming equity and charisma equity.
In
and
one
Mom was
bad
like, that's
bathroom.
it. Right. One bad bathroom spoiled it, like ruined it. And so like that's the same thing that can happen in any business. You create this equity through your charisma, through your personality, through your brand, through the ways that you continue to show up in a public facing way. And a certain group of people really latch onto that. And if you're doing it well and you're doing good, more people come.
Right.
And if you're not, you start to drain that equity until there's nothing left, and then nobody wants to be around you, and they're only choosing you if you are the only game in town, and they really feel like they don't have a choice.
Right. Right. And like you're using the language equity, and I feel like the thing that's really under that, especially in a small business or a micro business, is trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We're
100%.
talking about trust. You build trust. And when you build trust, sometimes people will give you a second chance. But sometimes, like your mom, they'll be like, nope, that was disgusting. I'm never doing that again. And when that happens, it frays. It doesn't necessarily fracture, but it frays the relationship. And so now we're cautious, and now we're not sure. Now we're looking for other options. Now we're always looking around. And, that trust relationship with Apple and Apple's products started to fray when Apple stopped trying to be the cutting edge. People had always relied on them to help them always know for sure. If you've got an Apple, if you've got the latest Apple product, you are out front. And that's just not true anymore. If you've got
That's right.
you've got some things, but now just like all the PC people, you got to be digging through all the stats and like, what does this mean and what does that mean, and do I really have a fancier computer, or did you just put a new case on my old computer and charge me $3,000 for it? And that relationship creates fatigue, it creates exhaustion, it creates it creates instability, and people right now especially desperately want stability. If you can give your customer right now, if you can give your customer, your client, the experience of stable, consistent presence with a quality product and a quality experience, they will collapse in your arms in relief.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be a high-end luxury brand to create that kind of an experience for your people, especially right now because the floor is so low. Right? It really amounts to do the things you said you're going to do and don't change your values midstream, right?
Right.
If you said you believe in this, act like it.
Go believe in
and
it.
Follow through on it. Yeah.
Right. And don't suddenly change your policies because the way the political wind blew.
Right.
And when you provide that, you can charge more money. Like those people who were at local seafood, local ocean, and everybody knew their name, and like you can charge those prices because those people know with confidence that this organization is not suddenly going to become a different sort of place from the place that they trust it to be.
Right. And they're happy to keep coming back and supporting them with their dollars and telling other people about them and bringing their dogs to come sit on the patio with them and like the whole experience, right? Like you get to identify with this great group of people doing this great thing. And now I'm going to come a couple times a week. And when my friends come to town, I'm going to bring them too, because I want them to experience it, right? Like that infectious contagion of trust. Mm-hmm. Supply and demand, right? Like we were talking about housing, but we're talking about supply and demand here. Like as you supply something great, more people want to come, and that allows you to naturally increase pricing or availability and or both in different ways that allow you to continue to do good, and it becomes this self-replicating situation, right? And I think that's really valuable.
It is, and it improves other things too. You know, I'm always on about if you can't pay top financial dollar, but you can pay okay, and then you provide stability and benefits and flexibility, and you're going to become one of the most sought after employers in your space. Not because you have the highest numbers everywhere, right? Like not because you've won that war, because the only way really to be able to consistently win that war is to exploit somebody.
Right.
But because maybe you don't do that, but you make sure that your employees have really top flight health benefits and they get all the time off they need when they're sick, and when their kids are sick they can use their sick time for that, and like you start to build this very human relationship with the human beings that work for you, and suddenly everybody's like, hey, you want to be treated like a human being? You should go work for them. Yeah. And you know, that's what Costco does. They pay well, but they don't pay, you know, $100 an hour for their floor staff. What they do is
everybody's not making $70,000 a year at Costco, or 90 or whatever.
I haven't done the math. I haven't done the math. I think their starting wage is 20 something, so it's not terrible, but it's not $70,000 a year. But people get treated well, and they have good benefits, and it's a good place to work. And if you ask your average Costco employee, do you like working here? They'll be like, yeah. And if you try to get a job at Costco, good luck, because they don't have openings very often. And that really is the truth, right? Like anybody can say anything on their sales floor, but when you look at the job listings and they're like, yeah, maybe we'll have a couple of job postings next year. That speaks really well for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate something. As we're going through this series of these different businesses, there is no one perfect, no. I'm always going to be able to find something in somebody's business model or the way that they're doing something. I'm like, I wish this was different, right? Like there's always going to be that.
Right.
But that's not the goal here. The goal here is to highlight the things that are being done well so that you can then look at that and go, how can I do something like that? Or does it make sense to do something like that in my organization?
Right.
And if so, how? Like, what could we do to turn the volume up on doing more of the right things and turn the volume down on some of the things that maybe that's how we got started and we didn't know any better, or we didn't have another way, and now we do. Now we've
Right.
got options, so let's do something different.
Right. Or, maybe that entire model was the thing we did to get started, and now let's explore. Like, maybe that we don't know if there's another way, but part of the goal of this series is to give people ideas, to give people inspiration, to show people, okay, this organization is running. They still exist, and they've done this thing that everybody says you can't do, because if you do that, business is business, and business won't grow if you do that, right? To paraphrase the Lorax. And so this is an opportunity to be like, how can you be more Loraxy and less once-lery? What opportunities are there? And so, yeah, like, we're never ever here to rag on a company that's operational like that.
Right.
At least not a
Right.
small company. Sometimes we will bring up large companies, but 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 what we see here, and the reason that we're bringing any company on this show, is because we want to talk about what we saw that we loved. And what we see that we love at Local Ocean is this robust, cooperative, employee oriented model that makes sure that people get a living wage, that makes sure that the cost of doing business isn't passed on to the employees,
Right.
but is instead passed on to their very happy customers.
Yes.
Any final words?
I think the thing that is probably the most impactful thing, like, if you don't remember anything from this episode, and there's lots to remember, right? It's like, it's important to listen, right? Like, to really pay attention, especially if you're a smaller micro business owner. It's really easy to get parochial in your viewpoint of what's going on in your business and forget that there's this whole world beyond you. And if you're paying attention, and I know there's lots to pay attention to, and if you've decided what your listening outposts are going to be, which team members I'm going to listen to, which customers I'm going to listen to, which community leaders am I going to listen to, when you've got those listening stations, you have an opportunity to then assimilate that information and make better decisions for the organization about how you want to continue to be showing up and how you can really provide value in ways that are beyond product for dollar value, right? And I think that that's something that more businesses can do, and frankly should do.
Yeah, and to build on that, one of the ways that you can make sure that you do that, because running a business is complicated, there's a lot going on, but one of the ways that you can make sure you do that is building into your calendar semi-annual or every quarter, quarterly audits, where you sit down and you just kind of think about, are we listening to our people? Who's at the table? Who's not at the table? How do we decide if there should be a table, or if we should just throw out the table and start over with some other model, right? Or do we need to prop the door open because not enough people are getting in? Asking some of the more progressive questions about the conversations that you're having at a leadership level about who's getting served by your organization and who's serving in your organization, and whether everybody's needs are getting met all the time, which is my favorite soapbox. So thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. Where can people find you if they want to find you?
You can always find me at lisarobinyoung.com. Robin's got 2 B's, and then I'm on various social platforms at Lisa Robin Young.
And I'm at Alegiano Consulting. I'm told that I need to change what my business is called. Happened just this week. I'm at Alegiano Consulting. I do coaching and consulting for small businesses and other organizations, and for leaders of those small businesses and other organizations. So you can definitely have a conversation with me. There's a big book a call button. Just don't worry about anything else on the page if you don't want to. Just hit book a call, and we'll get on the phone and we'll have a conversation. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. This has been PowerPivot Season 3, a podcast about using the power in your business for good, with host Leela Sinha of the Intensives Institute and Alegiano Consulting. With Zim, you heard co-host Lisa Robin Young. The podcast is produced by Leela Sinha with support by William Jameson. To support our podcast and other related work, please consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/LeelaS.